Welcome to Suzanne's studio. I'm Suzanne Barnett, your host, and tonight I have a really special guest. Cantor Kay Greenwald is the Director of Placement for the American Conference of Cantors, and we'll find out all about that, as well as being a
Cantor Emerita.
A Cantor Emeritus at the Congregation of Beth Am in Los Altos Hills. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Kate. I really screwed that up.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you. First of all, you were on the show about a year ago, and people said, please have Cantor Kay Greenwald back.
That's very nice. Thank you.
And you're so talented, and I see you occasionally during the year. But first of all, I wonder if everybody knows what a cantor is. So would you tell us?
Sure. So, a cantor is someone, an ordained cantor, is someone who has spent 5 years in seminary, 4 or 5 years in seminary, which is a graduate education. So you have to have an undergraduate degree already in order to be accepted into a seminary program to be ordained as a cantor. And you spend those 5 years studying lots of stuff. So Jewish music from as long ago as we know it to the present day. So everything going back to chanting of the Torah, and then melodies that are called Mi-Sinai, which means from Sinai. They're not as old as really being given at Mount Sinai, but they have a very long and storied tradition in Jewish history and a place in Jewish music. Through the music of the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries, and then contemporary music, that's art music in Israel, music that is done in, camps around the country where kids go to camp, and everything really in between. There's also some study of music of the Ladino culture, which were the Jews of the Iberian Peninsula. They spoke Ladino, which is, Yiddish is like a German-ish language. Ladino is a Spanish-ish language, and so there is a whole wealth of music that comes out of that tradition as well. So there's a lot of music, but in addition, there is most students today actually take a unit or two of clinical pastoral education. I did not do that. My pastoral training was more on the job, but a lot of students study that in school now. They will have classes in text, Jewish text. They'll have a class or two in, issues of dealing with congregants, writing a eulogy, wedding charges, those kinds of things. You have classes in Jewish thought and theology, which is kind of a misnomer in Judaism, but all of those things. So it's a very well-rounded, and Hebrew, of course.
I know that you are an opera singer. Why would you want to become a cantor? Why did you?
Oh, there's a lot of reasons. So I sang opera with reasonable success, I would say. I made a good living as an opera singer in Europe. But it is not... it wasn't a lifestyle that I found to be very meaningful or friendly to keeping a family going. And it also is a difficult lifestyle. I think I have many friends who have been successful at it and have maintained their humanity, but it is difficult to maintain your humanity in the performing arts. People are, you're kind of always working on getting that next job, and you're a little wary of the people around you. So I I decided that I wanted to do something that was really meaningful with my life and with my music. When I was a little girl, I'd wanted to be a rabbi. So when I was a little girl, little girls didn't grow up to be rabbis or cantors or anything like that. And it wasn't until I was getting ready to be married to my husband, and the cantor who had officiated at his bar mitzvah was going to do our wedding, and she happened to be a woman, that the light bulb went off, and I thought, oh, I can do that. So, and it is an incredibly meaningful career. It's been great.
And furthermore, this is so hot. Here, you are once a cantor, always a cantor, right? But now you have this other very prestigious profession because you're the director of cantors. You place them,
Well,
right?
I place them. I'm not the president of the
number one.
organization.
Okay.
I was the president a few years ago, but I'm not. So this is only for the reform movement. But it is, I feel very privileged and honored to be in this position. And I help congregations find their new cantor when a cantor moves on or retires, and I help cantors find congregations when they're ready to move on or when they've just been ordained and they're looking for their first pulpit.
How do you do that?
So,
God.
It's great work, actually.
Is it really?
It really is. It's great work. There's less matchmaking than you might think. In general, people like to do their own matchmaking for themselves. But what I do try to help my colleagues figure out what they are really looking for in a pulpit and in a congregation. I try to help congregations figure out what they're looking for in their new cantor. And I hold a lot of hands as people go through this process. It's a very nerve-wracking process for both sides, really trying, because it's the square peg in the round hole syndrome. You might have a wonderful cantor and a wonderful congregation, but they might not fit together. And the chemistry between the rabbi and the cantor is very, very important because they'll be very close partners working together to lead the congregation. So that, in addition to does the cantor fit in well with our community, with who we are, there's this whole other piece. Do the cantor and the rabbi, like each other, and do we think they'll work well together? Will their visions be similar? Will they be able to, take us somewhere new and exciting and different, or keep us on the same path we're on if that's what we'd prefer? But how are they going to work together? So I do a lot of hand-holding while congregations are nervous and cantors are nervous about, finding the right fit.
But it seems, and I said this before on the other show, because I didn't really know about cantoring. And I said, after you, like you just told us, you do more, the cantor, or you, seem to do a lot more than the rabbi.
I don't know if we do more. I really don't. I'm not sure that that's accurate. No, but we both have. There's a large responsibility for the rabbi and the cantor in a congregation. Some congregations don't have cantors, so that's
why not?
So that's it. Some congregations can only afford one member of the clergy,
I see.
And that is usually a rabbi.
Yeah.
Not always, but most of the time it is.
Yeah.
And so a congregation has to be a certain size before it can afford to have 2 senior staff people. Mm-hmm. So at that point, a congregation will decide potentially to bring on a cantor. And that's usually the decision that a congregation makes if they get to that sort of size where they feel like they can afford a second person, because they want to have that musical part brought in with the other clergy pieces.
How many?
But they're big jobs.
And
for
how
both.
many rabbis can sing like you? Hello.
Well, there's a rabbi at Beth Am who has a beautiful singing voice. So if you
Really?
ever, yes,
Oh,
Rabbi
and
Sarah
she's a
Weissman.
woman.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's wonderful.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. She's not a cantor. She hasn't spent all the time studying music that a cantor has spent. But I have not spent all the time studying everything that she has studied also. So it really does take two. But there's singing rabbis out there. She's a beautiful, beautiful voice. But a singing rabbi is not a cantor.
Yeah.
They bring something very different than, it. So the story that I tell is from the show that I saw. So I could get it completely wrong. I saw the show when I was very young, and you may have seen the show. It was called Gertie, Gertie, Gertie Stein is Back, Back, Back. I don't know if
yeah.
And she tells the story of a painting on her wall by Manet that was a favorite of hers. And the painting, the Germans came to her home and they took all of her art, including this painting. And she really, really missed the painting. And she was talking to her dear friend, Pablo Picasso, and said, I really miss that Manet. It was a still life of apples, I think. And he said, well, apples, anybody can paint apples. And from memory, apparently, he painted a replica of the Manet. To me, what made Picasso who he was, that all of that was inside of him. He had that history, he had that knowledge, he had that technique, and then he was able to do something just totally out of the box and break out and be creative. And that's what all of that knowledge of Jewish music can do for a cantor. You have to know on whose shoulders you are standing. And so to spend that time and be so in-depth in the music of our people for so many centuries can then allow us to do something that is part of that and comes out of that, but might be something very different and new and creative.
But Kay, you're not singing anymore.
Well, I sing in my voice lessons, which I love. I sing, I still do some funerals and some weddings. And so I still sing. I just don't sing on the bima anymore.
And you're going to sing for us right now, if you
Right
will.
now?
Right now.
Okay.
I can't wait.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. This song, Erev Shoshanim, is by Joseph Hadar, and it is a song that I sing often at weddings, usually as people start processing down the aisle. It's a love song. An evening fragrant with roses, let us go out to the orchard. Myrrh, spices, and frankincense shall be as a threshold for your feet. ערב של שושנים נצאנה אל הבוסתן מור בשמים ולבונה לרגלך מפתן לילה יורד לאט ורוח שושן נושבה הווה אלחש לך שיר בלט, זמר של אהבה. שחר הומה יונה, ראשך מלא טללים, פיך אל הבוקר שושנה, אכתפנו לי. לילה יורד לאט, ורוח שושן נושבה. הווה אלחש לך שיר בלט, זמר של אהבה. זמר של אהבה.
Kay, that was so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are the words hot and romantic?
Love is in the air. They're definitely romantic words. Yes, yes. Some of the texts that come from Song of Songs are much more hot.
I like that word. I don't use the word cool. But of course, that's what it means, really.
Yes.
Okay, a really difficult question, but I would love to know. You have such an important position now, and you were really cantoring it up for all the stuff that you've done. Which do you like better? Isn't that awful?
It's not awful. It's a very hard question to answer. I don't know that I
Yeah.
have an answer. There are things I miss very much about being a pulpit cantor. One of the things I miss the most, actually, is teaching children. So a primary focus for most cantors is working with children on their way to becoming bar and bat mitzvah. And that work can be incredibly meaningful, and I miss that. I miss those moments and those opportunities with kids right on the age of becoming teenagers. It's an interesting age, and in a classroom they're usually pretty horrible, but when one-on-one, it can be really wonderful. So I miss that. I do. But the work I do offers opportunities that I didn't have as well. This time I spend getting to know congregations around the country, sometimes visiting them, but often just speaking with their rabbis and their leadership and learning about how committed they are and how much they care, and just seeing the breadth of communities there are out there. There's something really wonderful about that as well. So I'm a little torn. Each job is wonderful in its own way.
And how fortunate that you have this job, and you can always go back to being, what is a pulpit cantor?
So a pulpit cantor is someone who works in a congregation. So this would be someone who co-leads services with the rabbi, or they lead for each other when the other one isn't there in some smaller congregations, with the rabbi or rabbis, I should say, and someone who does have involvement with children's education, often with adult education, in other programming of the congregation as well. Someone who is making pastoral visits on a regular basis and is present for families during happy times and sad times.
Well, at this point, it's nearly over our show. I'm of course going to have you back once a year. Tell us some meaningful moments that you've had.
So one of the most meaningful moments that I had, I think, was the moment that let me know I had really chosen the right career, I made the right life choice. And I was still a student, and I was in my first student pulpit. So as a student, you start learning how to be in a congregation, and we all have student pulpits. And I was working with bar and bat mitzvah students, and there was this little girl, and she was a bit of a social butterfly, and and was the life of the party at all of the bar mitzvah parties and bat mitzvah parties. And we had just started our work together, and she had the Torah portion to go home and read over for herself for the first time and read what it was about, and it happened to be the first portion in the book of Exodus. And she came running into her lesson the next week, threw open the door to my office and said, "Cantor, do you think anybody could see that burning bush or just Moses?" And I thought, yes, this is the job I'm supposed to do.
Yes, yes.
It was just such a great moment that her passion and her enthusiasm, and to bring it out of her and to discuss, well, what if it was just Moses? And what if it was everybody? And how would that be different? And what would it mean? From a 12-and-a-half-year-old girl, it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. And that has really stayed with me. There are tougher moments, too. There was a young man I worked with his father, about 7 months before the bar mitzvah, 8 months before the bar mitzvah, had gone out in the backyard and blown his brains out. And the young man had found him, the boy had found his father. And the boy was very troubled anyway, and this naturally did not help the situation. And the mother allowed me to be in touch with the boy's therapist, and I started conversations with him, and he said to me, he's never going to be able to do this. He's not going to be able to stand up in front of the congregation and chant. He has so much going against him. And I thought, he needs to know that he's good at something. He needs to know that he has mastered something. And I just decided that it was going to happen. And I met with him every day for 6 months, every day. And his therapist was in the congregation the day of the bar mitzvah. I'm going to cry. And he came to me after, he said, I can't believe it. It was the most beautiful thing to see him up there, feeling so good about himself, which he needed. He really needed it. So that was just incredible.
That was very dramatic. Oh my God. Do you ever follow these kids after their bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah as they become adults?
Some of them I do, absolutely. I have been very fortunate to officiate at weddings for some of them.
Really?
Yes, which is very exciting. So far, yes, it's a wonderful thing.
And you can still officiate, can't you?
Oh yes, and I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can sing. I know where you sing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I sing.
No, your voice is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Is there any way that you can sing more?
This evening, that's what I prepared.
No, I don't mean here. But I mean, give the planet a break, Kay. Come on.
You're very sweet.
No, I mean it.
I just love making music, and and opportunities present themselves. They do. So I enjoy that when that happens, but I also just enjoy making music for its own sake. And that's something that I've always loved, and I feel very blessed that I can do that.
Yeah. And you'll always do that, right? Absolutely.
I hope so.
And your husband, I understand, I haven't met him, but he's a renowned neurologist.
I don't know if he's renowned, but he's definitely a neurologist.
Yeah. And he plays the piano. You don't play the piano.
I don't. I should, but I don't. But he does, and he's wonderful.
And he can sing also.
No, not so much.
Really?
Not so much. He hasn't got a bad voice. He's just never worked on really using it.
Yeah. And you have a musical son. Tell us about him.
I do have a musical son. He's a jazz drummer, and jazz is his passion. This may have been his rebellion away from his parents' music, but he loves jazz, and very seriously loves jazz, although he's not making it his career. But that's not a bad decision. The joke, what's the definition of a rock musician? Someone who plays 4 chords for thousands of people. What's the definition of a jazz musician? Someone who plays thousands of chords for 4 people. So, so he can gig, I think, on the side, probably a lot. He's in some demand as a drummer already, and I think he loves that.
And on the next show, we have to hear about your husband and the courtship, which is, it's not cool. It's very hot. Yeah, I love to get that in, of course. You know me. So what are your plans for, say, the next year?
Well, to continue doing what I'm doing. This is actually my busiest time of the year right now. I have a number of congregations who are looking for cantors, and a number of cantors who are who have retired actually from congregations, and other cantors who then are interested in moving potentially, and then the cantors who will be ordained this May, who get to come into placement this coming Friday. So they're starting to get very excited. And that is really my main plan. My son will graduate from UCLA in June, which is very exciting, and then he'll begin his graduate school studies somewhere. We don't know where yet, and so that's pretty much where we are at the moment.
And you must keep singing.
And I will sing, yes.
You promise.
I promise.
Do you do any opera work now?
No.
No,
That was a different
that's
life.
a whole different.
That was a different life.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the explanation is that you're so much better off what you're doing. I mean, how fortunate you are, how blessed. But it takes someone like you, the Miss Talent, the Miss, the Miss Cantor of the world, right? Yeah.
Well, they're making me flash.
Oh, good. Well, Kay, I want to thank you so much for being
Thank you,
on the
Suzanne.
show.
It's a pleasure.
And I really enjoyed doing the show last year with you, and I thought that it would be such an honor to do it again.
Well, thank you.
So-
You're very, very sweet. And
My pleasure.
thank you.
I only wish you in the new year the very best of health.
Thank you.
How you got through that
You
other is
also.
a miracle, right? And just thank you so much for being on the show, Kay.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I want to thank our wonderful crew. They're unbelievable. And little by little, I'm going to be able, after all these years, to interview them. And of course, I want to thank our audience for watching, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.